what the vision for this is and what I hope that we can get out of this together. But I thought appropriately this passage in Matthew, the book of Matthew, chapter 5, as I think about congregations um, switching to renewable energy, to clean energy, that not only is about caring for creation or saving on our bills and being fiscally with being good stewards of our finances, but it also is a way of being a light in the earth. And so this passage talks about being salt and light. So Matthew 5:13 through 16, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So I just wanted to start us off with that grounding. Remember that we do this because it aligns with our values. It's the way that we practice our faith and have our faith be a light in the world. So my role is congregational organizer, and I've been with IPL now a little over a year now. And one of the things, just kind of noticing as the landscape in in environmentalism and the climate world has kind of changed. There's been a lot of uh, investment, there's been policies passed, there's now a lot more resources out there. And even with that, some of the laws have changed that make it so that houses of worship, which are normally not allowed to uh, uh, tap into certain tax credits, or can now uh, do that through the system of direct pay. So, and Maddie's gonna talk more about that. But with that and all these new changes that are happening all the time, I I was thinking that maybe we need to find a way to create a space where folks can come and just talk about these things, um, where we can both be educational, where we can talk about some of the either it's programming that IPL is doing or things IPL we're learning at IPL because this is all changing. So there new things are happening. So it's some ways it's us learning as well, but as well as a place for people to come and ask questions. Because we get emails all the time of people asking, "Hey, we're considering solar. Hey, we're considering like getting a new HVAC. Hey, um, you know, we want to understand these codes and these standards and like, are we in compliance? All these things that we're getting, and so we thought, what if there's a space where we can all come together, learn and talk about it, and hopefully walk away with some knowledge that can really help our congregation back home. So that's what this is. We're calling it Solar Shepherds. Maddie will talk about their role as clean energy shepherd, but also being an artist, I like Solar Shepherds as like the alliteration is kind of cool. But it's all things clean energy. It will be talk so, and however that meets with your congregation, with your location specific particular site. So that's kind of the gist. I want us to like feel free if you have questions and whatnot. We're gonna have a Q&A session. What we're gonna do is Maddie's gonna uh, talk about our solar programming, and then we're gonna do a Q&A, just kind of anything. It could be about solar, it could be about other things if you're interested in that. Um, and we'll kind of also afterwards kind of think about what else we could talk about, what are other things that people are interested in. So if you have questions, like if you have a laundry list of things, like please, like we'll we will make sure we get to all of that. So I want to pass it on to my colleague Maddie, and they're gonna take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. And thanks, Josh, for that intro. I'm Maddie Smith. My pronouns are they, them, and I I am IPL-DMV's Clean Energy Shepherd, which basically means that I help congregations with any sort of solar, clean energy, energy audit, energy efficiency, any sort of more technical questions that folks have about, what kind of concrete projects could we actually do in our congregation to save energy and money. I'm the person to go to for that. And so, Josh and I have been really excited about creating this space that can be sort of a resource for our folks. And we're also recording this session so that, we can send it out to folks later who may also want to learn about these different things. And so today, our topic that we're going to focus on, that I'm focusing my brief presentation on, is on power purchase agreements for congregational solar projects. But as Josh said, we are really hoping that this can be a space of learning, and we're going to be doing these calls about every month. And so if in the future there are things that you're like, I'd really like to know about this for my congregation, like I want to know what resources there are for energy audits, or energy efficiency programs, or I want to get a heat pump but I don't know where to start, like please email us with those questions and we'll consider those topics for future sessions as well. And so today we really wanted to focus on power purchase agreements for congregational solar projects, because what we've discovered in about, the last 10 to 15 years of supporting congregations that want to go solar is that we've discovered that the most common way that that happens is through a power purchase agreement. That doesn't mean that's the only way that our congregations can go solar, but we find it's a very common way, but it's also something that is sometimes hard to wrap your mind around at first, or to convince your congregation's board or council to talk about those things. And so I'm going to pull up a brief presentation sort of delving in on that topic, and then we'll have time for questions both on that topic and anything else that you want to ask us that we can be resources for you all. Okay. All right. Okay, so here's my slideshow. Is it full screen for you all? Can you see that? Okay, perfect. So this is just a screenshot of our solar congregations map, which maybe one of my colleagues can drop in the chat while we're speaking. This is really fun because every time we hear about a new congregational solar project in the region, we add it to our map. And I know Julie is here today from Emmanuel Church on the Hill in Alexandria, and I just added them to the map today, which is very exciting. So, and we intend this to be a resource both for people to see, like, okay, like how did other congregations do this? Has anyone in our area done this? Has anyone in our denomination or faith tradition done this? And so we want, basically I curate this and want it to be a resource for folks. And so, building on everything we've learned, that's kind of what this presentation has come out of. Really quick, I just wanted to share some really fun solar photos of different congregations that have done it. This is Reverend Dr. Earl Trent Jr. from Florida Avenue Baptist Church, right in front of the Howard Hospital, the Howard U Hospital in DC. They were one of the first congregations to go solar. Here's a photo from a recent dedication at Beth Shalom congregation in Frederick, a synagogue that recently went solar, and they are the first house of worship in Frederick to go solar. Here's Emmanuel Church on the Hill with their solar blessing. I just love this photo and had to add it. And it's not just churches and synagogues that are going solar. The Maryland Buddhist Vihara has also gone solar in Silver Spring, which is very exciting. This is an Episcopal church out in Poolesville, St. Peter's. And here is a church in Southeast DC that has gone solar, Covenant Baptist UCC, who we work pretty closely with. So that's just to give, and this is just a snapshot of the various congregations in our region that have gone solar together. And so here's what I really want to focus on. So how do DMV congregations go solar? The main, and this gets a little more complicated as we delve in, but basically the main ways that congregations go solar are either they decide they want to purchase the solar panels themselves and put them on their building's roof, or they go through something called a power purchase agreement, which is what we'll basically be talking about, which means that you don't own the solar panels on your building's roof. Somebody else owns them. But the trade-off there is that there's zero upfront cost in an agreement like this. Whereas if you want to own the panels on your building's roof, there's a large upfront cost. And we find that for the vast majority of our congregations, even with the sort of tax credit that Josh was talking about, there is still that's still a pretty big barrier for houses of worship to be able to go solar. I'm not saying that power purchase agreements are the best way to go solar. We are really here to serve you and what your congregation wants and to give you all of the potential options that they are. We just really wanted to focus on power purchase agreements today because they're common and not always widely understood by the folks in congregations that are making these decisions. And so the basis of a power purchase agreement is that somebody else owns the panels on your roof. You don't pay anything to put those panels on your roof. And the congregation buys the energy that those panels produce at a cheaper cost than what you would have been paying your electric utility. And so you are saving long-term for the life of the length of the power purchase agreement, which for most congregations we find is about 20 to 25 years. Okay, why can't I go forward? Oh, there we go. Okay, so who does what in a power purchase agreement? And we like to focus on this because sometimes people say to us, what do you mean that we can potentially put solar panels on our house of worship's roof without paying anything? Like, that sounds fake. That sounds too good to be true. Like, that must be a scam. It's not a scam. And that's why we like to go into, how does this make sense, both for the congregation and for the developers that are putting together these proposals for houses of worship. So like I said, the company owns the panels. And because of that, congregations don't have to worry about maintenance or issues. If there's a roof issue with your roof because of the panels, you don't have to deal with that because you don't own the panels. Like, the company is responsible for all of that, and they insure their asset, etc. And that can be really helpful for congregations who maybe aren't sure they have the technical expertise or capacity or know-how to really deal with everything that might come up with your solar panels in terms of maintenance or repairs during 20 years or during the life of that agreement. And then basically what happens on the billing side of things is that the congregation will continue to pay their electric utility bill that they'll get credits on for the solar that the panels are producing on their building, and then they'll pay a second power purchase agreement bill to the company that owns the solar. But overall, they'll be paying less than they would have been paying without having solar on your roof. Okay, is it too good to be true? No. So basically, I just want to really quickly go through the ways that solar developers make money on a PPA. And basically all of this comes from our congregational solar resource website, which we'll put in the chat later and can share out with everyone. And what we were just finding is, people kept emailing. Before I was at IPL, people kept emailing Joelle, our director, every week or every month, about, I want to learn about solar. How can we do it? And so we sort of put together all of that knowledge that we've learned based on what people ask us about and how projects have actually gone. So we have this really amazing website that's a resource for congregations who are thinking about solar. And so a lot of this comes from that, and we'll be sending that out too. Whenever anybody emails me about solar, usually the first thing I say is go read our website, make sure the people who will need to like sign off on this in your congregation read it and understand, the basics of what a power purchase agreement. You don't have to be a lawyer to understand what a power purchase agreement is, but we do like, sometimes it's hard for folks to wrap their head around because it's really different compared to the different other sorts of agreements or contracts that a church or a congregation may enter into with different entities. So the federal tax credit right now is 30% for solar. And so anybody that owns solar panels can take advantage of that. And that's one of the ways that the developers make back their investment into the solar. As Josh said, congregations, nonprofits can also now take advantage of that 30% tax credit. That's not the focus of my presentation today, but if you want to learn more about that, please reach out. It's new. We know of a few congregations in Maryland that are thinking about applying for that to be able to get the 30% back. What that means though, like congregations can only take advantage of that if they purchase their own solar panels. And so that is not really applicable if you're thinking about a power purchase agreement. Different states also have different incentives, and they're different amounts. And so those are also things that developers can take advantage of in different states when they put up a project. Like Maryland has a clean energy fund, I know, that funds this. And on our website, there's links to the different programs that allow this. Depreciation is a big thing that private companies can take advantage of when it comes to owning solar that our houses of worship cannot. And I won't read through this whole slide, but solar panels, like any property, slowly, like they depreciate and lose value, and then companies can deduct that on their taxes. And that's something right now that nonprofits and houses of worship simply cannot take advantage of, which is one of the reasons why, um, the power purchase agreement has made sense for a lot of communities. Okay, and this is a big one that I want to make sure folks understand. So solar renewable energy credit sales, or SREC. You may hear people throw around the term SREC. This is what it is. And it's, usually abbreviated SREC. And basically what an SREC is it's 1,000 kilowatt hours of generated solar electricity. So if you have solar panels on your house, and you own those panels and own your house, those solar panels, for every 1,000 kilowatt hours that those panels generate, that's equal to one SREC. And so that the S and SRECs have different prices in different states. As you can see at the bottom, in DC, the SRECs are very, very valuable. And the reason we have SRECs are due to state level clean energy laws called Renewable Portfolio Standards. And so basically it's a commitment at the state level to try to incentivize clean energy, specifically solar energy. And so that's one of the ways that folks are able to make solar projects happen, because they're financially viable because of the money people can make off of the SRECs. And so anyone who owns the solar panels also owns the SRECs unless you decide to sell them. And so when you sell, and these prices are not exactly up to date. I should have looked at what the exact up to date prices were. But these are, and they fluctuate as time goes on, but these are just an example of what they were last spring. So DC, one SREC was $420. Maryland, it was 58. So that's a big difference. And if you look at our solar congregations map, you can see sort of just this sea of blue dots right where the District of Columbia is. And that mainly is due to how lucrative solar is there because of these high SREC prices, because of the local policy, the clean energy policy that has been put in place there at the state level. Maryland, an example of the price is $58. I will say that Governor Wes Moore just signed a bill recently that will make SRECs for smaller projects more valuable. And the size limit is so large for that basically any congregational solar project in Maryland just became a little bit more potentially viable because now the SRECs could be sold at 1.5 times the original value for those solar projects. So this is a policy decision that we're really excited about because it will make it possible, potentially more financially possible for developers to offer some of our congregations power purchase agreements in Maryland where they previously were not possible, simply because the value of those SRECs just went up. And then Virginia does have SRECs. You can see it's the lowest price. And also, if you look at our solar congregational map, that's reflected in the number of communities that have been able to go solar in Northern Virginia. That doesn't mean we won't be able to, I won't say that we won't be able to get a power purchase agreement for any community in Northern Virginia. That's not true. There are a few that have been able to do it, and they mainly have been extremely large solar projects because the larger the project, the easier it is to just make everything happen financially on the developer's end. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So could your congregation go solar through a PPA? And the answer is maybe, because every building is very different, and their energy usage is different. Like I can't just, tell everyone today, like, we can get you a power purchase agreement, like, let's do it. But it's possible, and there's a couple things that mainly determine whether or not it's possible for your community. So as we just talked about, a lot depends on where you are. DC is the easiest place to get a power purchase agreement for a congregational solar project because solar is so lucrative there, and we're hoping it stays that way. The mayor has recently made some budget cuts that we're worried about that could impact the value of SRECs in DC, but I won't get into that too much. But if you're interested in learning more about that, please reach out to us. Maryland, solar just got a bit more lucrative because of what I was saying, the new policy the governor just signed. And then, as I said, Virginia, it's harder. And there are a few openings and a few developers we work with that have made it possible. It really depends on, your building and what it looks like and how big the project would be. So, and leading into that, the big question, are you a good fit for solar? And so usually the first thing I do when people ask me about solar at their congregation is I take a look at their building on Google Maps satellite view and see, are there a lot of trees right around? Is there shading directly on parts of the roof that could impact, what the solar production would be? And of course, we don't tell people like cut down your trees so that you can have solar. Like we know that trees are also a very important part of the ways that our communities, care for creation. And so just because you're not a good fit for solar because of shading doesn't mean there aren't, all these other things that we can do. The big thing is size. So how big a space do you have? Do you have like a good south facing roof? Because that's, where nobody wants to put solar panels on a roof that faces north because you're not going to get as much sun there. And so it won't produce quite as much solar power. And then the roof material is also really important. So a lot of people come to us and are excited about solar, but tell me that they have a slate roof. There are hardly any solar installers that will install solar on a slate roof. And so what your roof is made of, how old it is, how steep it is, those are all things that we take into account to figure out, whether solar makes sense for your community. And then also the main thing the developers will need to look at to see whether they might be able to offer you proposal is your energy usage. So we always ask for folks to send 12 months of their energy bills to me, and that's so that the developer can figure out, okay, here's how much energy they use every year approximately. And they recognize that may change year to year, but they want to just go off of the most recent data that you all have on how much energy you've used, because that determines whether, then they'll look at what kind of system size could we fit on your roof, what would the production for that, what's that estimated to be, and how do those things either work together or not to see whether we could offer, a savings on your energy bills through a power purchase agreement. So sort of all those things work together to determine whether or not it's possible for you. And so it really is a case by case basis to figure out whether or not that will work for your community. Okay, so how can you get a solar proposal, PPA solar proposal for your congregation? Please email me, please reach out and let me know that you're interested. And I can start looking at your roof and seeing, and where you're based at, and see what might be possible. The one thing I forgot to say during the sort of geographical discussion is that for folks in Montgomery County, Maryland, there's a lot of projects that are able to happen there because of the great financing the Montgomery County Green Bank can offer there. And so, please reach out, particularly if you're located in Montgomery County, because often we can make something work. Not always, but often. And then, as I was saying, we always ask folks to sort of start this conversation within your congregation with those decision makers that are eventually going to have to sign off on it. One thing Joelle always likes to say, our director, is that it's the people, not the panels. The panels are the easy part of going solar in your community. You know, reaching consensus and making sure that everyone understands, what the project is, how the congregation will benefit, what the options are, and particularly, what a power purchase agreement is and how it works. Those are the main conversations that need to be, had often and early. There's nothing worse than, having this great proposal for this congregation, but then there's sort of one board member that is like stressed and confused and is wary of entering into an agreement like a power purchase agreement, and that sort of shuts down the whole project, and that's just a bummer, and it's not something we want to see. So we ask folks to have those conversations often and early within your communities, and we are always happy. I'm always happy to hop on the phone, or a Zoom board meeting or something to sort of talk through the basics, kind of like I'm doing right now. And we'll also have this recording that you can share with folks as well in the future. And then basically the technical information that we'll need to move forward are the 12 months of energy bills, and then information about the roof material, age, and warranty of your roof, of your building. And I think I can't see the questions people have put in the chat, so because I'm sharing my screen, so I'm going to stop sharing because I'm at the end, and look forward to answering your questions. Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you, Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we want to move into a time of Q&A. So if you have any questions, if you could click the raise hand function. If you have updated Zoom, you have to click react. and then click raised hand. And that way we can see who has a question and we'll answer in that order.
And also feel free to put stuff in the chat too, if that's easier. Yeah,
Yes, please.
Marie, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hello, did you
Hello.
ask?
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good. We've already had, I'm with Metropolitan AME Church in DC, for those of you who don't know. And we have had someone come in and look and talk about solar. Our situation is that the panels will not fit on our roof because of the way the roof is made, the peak and the angles and the north, south, east, or west. And so therefore we're looking, and the only way that we can go is with a solar farm. So have you all done anything with the solar farm? I know most of them in DC are pretty much full. So the question is, do you know anything about what's may become available? And can DC use a solar farm in Maryland?
That's a great question. I know there are definitely out of state projects that count for those DC that you can like subscribe to, as like what you're talking about is basically a community solar subscription for the church.
Yes, yes.
I believe, gosh, that's a great question. I believe there are things like that available. Like you said, they fill up pretty fast because there's such a high demand for them. One of the things that we also can help congregations with is subscribing to, because in DC and Maryland, there are third party energy suppliers. And depending on what those are, sometimes, you can find one that offers 100% green renewable energy credits, which basically means wind and solar. So that's
Mhm.
option that helps support clean energy um, when you're not able to put it on your roof. But let me ask around about that specifically, a subscription for a nonprofit congregation for community solar.
Okay, and my second question is the solar renewable energy credit for Maryland is for DC is $420, and for Maryland it's 58. That was in the spring of 23. Do you know if whether or not it's been increased any amount or a significant amount or just a small amount?
That's a great question, and I should have looked up the most updated numbers before talking to you all today. I just know that DC is pretty much significantly higher
Ahead of the game.
than
Yeah.
everyone, and
Always,
so much
always. Okay. All right. Thank you.
more lucrative in DC. The new sort of news about Maryland being able to up the value of those SRECs for smaller projects um, is is exciting, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to see some projects outside of Montgomery County in Maryland.
I'd like to have it from my house in Maryland. It's a little personal with it too. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Are there any other questions that folks have? Also could be about things other than solar. We're happy to answer folks. I see that Mark put a question in the chat, or um, we're in
Okay.
DC and understand SRECs vary according to the market. Is there a floor in the value of SRECs? How will they probably change over time? I will say that, so things are sort of up in the air in DC right now because of the mayor's budget. And I don't fully understand all of the policy things that have to do with that, but basically, because the DC government is trying to save money, we're worried that they will stop. We're worried that the price of SREX will go down, and it's a lot more complicated than that. And I can put you in touch with folks that want to ask that. However, I will say there are a lot of people who really understand how valuable the SREC market is in DC and how great it has been for enabling solar projects of all sizes to go online, including, homeowners that put solar on their homes and sell their SRECs to help, gain money back from that. And so that is sort of up in the air right now in DC. And I'm hopeful that it won't just totally crash. I don't know, Joelle, if you want to say anything more about that.
I mean, the demand is created by laws. So
You hear me?
there's usually sorry that there's some noise in where I am. The floor is created by the demand, but there's truly a ceiling. And the ceiling is that this alternative compliance payment, the utilities can pay instead of buying the SREC. And the utilities don't care about climate change. They just want to comply with the law. So if they can use the ACP to comply instead, and it's cheaper for them. So basically they're willing to pay up to the ACP for your SREC. So the laws are written to have that alternative compliance payment in there as a ceiling so that the SRECs cannot get more expensive than the ACP. I don't know that there's a true legal floor, but in practice, the demand is driven by the law.
Go ahead and try to hold.
Yes, thank you, Joel. That was well said.
Yeah. Gary Hartz has a question.
Yeah, hi Gary. Glad you're
Yeah,
here.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I actually have two questions. You've identified a number of locations where they've already received, they're involved in the solar program. Can you provide the information as to the percentage reduction in their electrical bill for each of those locations? Would be my first question. And that I'd prefer to get, you don't have to give it now, just, put it out on a website or an email. And then secondly, we've met all the qualifications. We've had the design done, and the capacity of the solar panels that they would put on our roof here in Poolsville exceeds our consumption by almost 3 times. However, it doesn't appear like we're going to be able to, get a substantial reduction in our electrical bill. And in fact, we were expecting, if we're generating 3 times our consumption, that we probably wouldn't even have a bill at all. So I'm trying to figure out whether it's really worth it to punch holes in our brand new roof that has I think 40-year warranty, if I'm not gonna get a return for the church that is, substantial based on the capacity, because we've got a huge area that all faces south, and it's a perfect location to do solar.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a large
And
project.
you're familiar with it, Maddie, I believe.
Yes, I know. I'm really glad that you came, Gary. Yeah, Gary and I have been talking to the Green Bank June. And so one thing I'll just say is that no one who ever goes solar will never have an electric bill. Everyone will still continue to get an electric bill, and that mainly has to do with the fact that no matter how big your project is, you will pretty much always be using more electricity in the winter than your panels are currently producing. And so, there's different graphs that show this for different congregations, but basically the way that works is that you get a credit on your bill when, in the summer months when there's a lot of solar energy being produced and you're often using less electricity in your buildings. And depending on what your AC is and how that works. And so pretty much you'll always have an electric bill every month. It just depends on whether or not you actually have to pay it every month. Does that make sense? Because sometimes it'll be like, here's all your credits. And actually, often, so for your congregation's case, you have what's called like a community solar proposal, because they're able to fit so much solar on your roof. And so often with that, you also get a lease payment with it. So that's another way. And so even if the church isn't directly benefiting from the solar energy by getting that credit on your bill, folks will get what's called this lease payment, and will use that often put that towards their electric bill. And so, Gary, I would want to delve into the specifics because I know we've got that proposal for you. And I'd love to just set up a call to make sure we go over that. Because I do think, because you're right, you want to make sure the church can benefit from getting the solar on the roof. And there's a couple different ways we can make that happen. And then also, we could also pursue and not go the community solar route and just go the PPA route where they just size the system to the church's energy usage. And that would mean it would be a smaller system, but it may be easier in that case to see what the benefits are to the congregation. And so there's a couple different options there that I think we should talk about because you all have such a great roof.
Yeah, we're prepared to discuss that, and I was aware that we would still potentially get bills. However, I was looking at a wash for the whole year. I mean, the offsets that would occur, that with the credits in the summertime would be able to offset what I'd have to pay potentially in the winter time for an electric bill. So I'm understanding all of that.
Okay.
And the community benefit, we've bounced around on that one too, but that becomes really bureaucratic in trying to identify all of the people that were members of the community and or the church that want to participate. And that becomes an administrative nightmare for a dinky little church to be participating in that and that validating what is and isn't. But we can discuss that later because there's an interest, but we didn't fall off the hay wagon yesterday, and we don't want to end up with a pig in a poke here under the circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say, June, don't you all have community solar at your building? So June is from another congregation in Montgomery County that entered into a very similar agreement. I'm wondering if you want to briefly speak about it, June?
Sure. It's Warner Memorial Presbyterian in Kensington. Our building roof is not as large as Poolsville's, but we did put a community solar on the roof. We were also offered lease payments and decided to take the energy discount instead. Yeah. So, and Gary, I would be more than happy to talk with you about how we came to that decision and our process that we used to evaluate the proposal and how we got through Presbytery as well. So yeah, please, you can reach out to me.
Okay,
I
thank
can
you.
put my email in the chat if that will help you.
I can also connect. I have both of your emails, so I can
Okay.
connect you.
Okay. Yeah.
And Gary, as to your first question about, what savings looks like, I can send you the Montgomery County Green Bank in particular has a good list of case studies of all the different congregational solar projects they've done, and they often do list like what the savings are expected to be for both the first year and then over 25 years. And so that is something, and it's because people always ask me, what can we expect to save? And it is really different for each building and location. But there is that information that I can send you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I'm really glad you're here.
Can I respond to two things that Gary brought up that might be of interest to other
Please
people?
do as well. Yeah.
The first has to do with this idea. So I just want to clarify that if somebody arranges a community solar project on your site, they will administer the membership subscriptions, and that's not on you. So, there are developers who specialize in creating community solar projects, and they administer the subscriptions in compliance with the Maryland law. So don't feel like that would be on you all. And that's something that June can talk about in more detail.
That would be way too much for any congregation to deal with. Absolutely.
But I also just wanted to speak directly to this question of like 100% of usage, 200% of usage, 300% of usage, because that comes, so the first of all, they will not, in most states, you are not allowed to put up solar with a power purchase agreement above 100% of your usage. In Maryland, I believe it's 200%, but basically you're not even allowed to do that. But even if you were allowed, it's not smart, because the power purchase agreement will specify what you're going to pay for that solar energy, and it is you will, you know, if you're using it, it's a savings to what you were paying for it before. But if you're just getting credited on your bill, the net metering, it's not as it's much less per kilowatt hour than what you would. So it's not actually in your interest to generate a lot more solar energy than your congregation will use. Now, you're very, very lucky. The vast majority of congregations do not have enough roof space to generate anything close to 100% of their usage, or just about 100%. But what Maddie was mentioning that's important is that if you do decide to do this fully financed, no money down power purchase agreement arrangement, they are likely to size your system smaller than what you have capacity for, so that it comes in close to 100%, because it's not really going to be financially viable for you to do a power purchase agreement unless you're buying most of that electricity for your own use.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you.
And thank you, June, for sharing. I know we have a couple of people on here whose congregations already have solar, which is so exciting. So thanks for sharing your knowledge. I know we've got just a couple minutes left. Are there any other questions that we could answer? I also just wanted to say, to make sure to say that if people have suggestions about other topics to cover for future monthly webinars, please let us know. I have some ideas based on, you know, the questions that Josh and I are getting from our congregations, but we really want to make sure that they're things that you all are actually interested in learning about, or things that you know would take back to your communities.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to be kind of any topic that might spark an interest. It could be we do a deep dive on heat pumps and
Everybody
some of
loves
that,
heat
or
pumps, yeah.
we could talk about sort of just the initial energy audit, and how we go about doing that, things like so. There are many things we can cover. If you want to get nerdy and be a policy wonk, we can do that stuff too. It's fun. I know not for all.
Yep, it'd be very fun. I'm gonna go ahead and put a link to our congregational solar resource webpage in the chat. And this is where, almost everything that I talked about is there in some form of detail. And then please feel free, I'll send a follow-up email to everyone, but please feel free to email me if you're thinking at all about solar, or really any other projects. Because I want to be involved. I want to be able to support you all.
We have a question from Lucille Knowles. What is involved in an energy audit?
Yeah, hi Lucille. I'm glad you're here. Good to see you again. Basically what an energy audit is you invite someone to go to your congregation and take a look at both, the energy that your congregation is using in your building, and where there may be opportunities to save energy. And so it involves actually having someone physically come to your building, and they have different tests called a blower test, which is one of the things that can happen in an energy audit, where basically they, blow all this air into your building and then see how much leaks out, which is a way to sort of tell, where you might be losing energy in your building that's causing you to pay like a higher energy bill than you could be otherwise. And there's also, a smaller version of that's just called an energy walkthrough, where someone can just come walk through your building and give you ideas of like, oh, it looks like, you know, you don't have LEDs or you have the old version of LEDs. Like, let's, you know, here are some resources for where you can replace those, and incentives. Pretty much every state has incentives for replacing those sort of lighting projects. So that's just an example. But really what we find is congregations don't always know where to start and on those energy saving and money saving projects. And so getting an energy walkthrough or an energy audit is sort of the first step to be able to do that. Yeah. And I see, so June had suggested helping members of congregations to conserve home energy. That's a great idea too, because that's also something Josh and I get questions about. Is we mostly deal with congregational buildings, but we also get lots of questions about what people can do at home and what, you know, programs and incentives are available. And those do happen to be pretty different for homes versus nonprofit buildings. Okay, are there any last questions from folks, or should we go ahead and
I have one last question.
yeah.
What kind of fees are usually charged in doing the energy audits? If they do a walkthrough or if they do a blow through, you know, air through the facility, you have a sense of what's the average cost for
Yeah,
that?
so I have heard usually anywhere from $1,000 to a couple $1,000s for a full energy audit. I will say I know you worship in DC, and so in DC, we're trying to, you know, figure out how to help folks with that. In Maryland, there's a state program called Empower, where you can actually get any congregation in Maryland and any household can get a free energy walkthrough. And we have folks we can connect you with for that for Maryland folks. So please let us know about that. And then in DC, I'm actually currently talking to the DC Sustainable Energy Utility. They may be opening up, they may be starting to have capacity to do an energy walkthrough with for DC folks for free. And so that is something that I'm hoping I may be able to offer to folks soon. I can't say that for sure. And then we have folks that if you're interested in like paying for a full energy audit, there are folks we can connect you to as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll send you an email.
Please do. Thank you. And I see Douglas wrote in the chat, we would like an energy walkthrough. Are you in Maryland, Douglas?
Are you talking to me?
No, I was asking Douglas.
Yes, we are in Baltimore City.
Okay, great. Yes, we can get you hooked up with that for sure. So I
sent
have
it.
your
I sent an
email.
email.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes.
Great. Yes, we would love to connect because a lot of what we discover is a lot of people don't know that that's available to them, particularly in Maryland, where it is actually available, and we want to make sure folks can take advantage of that.
Douglas, what congregation are you with?
Zion Hill Baptist Church.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch.
Yes, we'll follow up for sure. And feel free to send Joshua an email if you have other questions that come up. We really want to be of service to our congregations. And yeah, we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you all in future months to talk about different things that you all want to learn about. Any last questions before we sign off?
I really want to thank everybody for being here.
Yeah,
This is
thanks
great.
everyone. This is really great.
We sent the email out late last week, and we're thrilled to see the response. So thank you all for being here. We'll be here again in July. I think it's July 22nd, Monday, July 22nd.
Yep.
So yeah, glad to see y'all.
Do we have to register for each session, or now are we going to get automatic Zooms?
I think I set it up that folks will register for the sessions only the sessions that they're interested in. But I can send you an email, Lucille, once we figure out exactly what we're gonna do for July.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everyone, and take good care. Have a good evening.
Take care. Good night.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Bye, thanks.